is the Knilly and PB podcast. In this weekly series, we're reading Twilight because Knilly hasn't read it and PB wants to send memes. I'm Knilly.
I'm PB.
And today we're talking about chapters 12 through 14 in New Moon. This is a pretty big reveal chunk on several fronts. But before we get big into it, how you doing, PB?
I'm doing good. I'm happy. A cold front just came in, so it's no longer hot and humid. And
Oh.
I'm just chilling.
It also got finally colder. It's like now 27 degrees here in New York after it being
Ooh.
high. This is the coldest it's been since December, quite honestly, which is really telling. We're halfway through.
Yep. Same
So
though.
appreciated the mildly warmer, not as cold weather, but also worried.
Hashtag concerned.
Concerned. All right, so in these chunk of chapters, so last we left off, there was something scrapping and tapping at the window at Bella's window in the evening, and it was essentially, what could it be? Who could it be? And from Bella's various paranoias, she's very worried about Victoria still, and or Laurent, because she doesn't have confirmation that he's out of the picture yet. So she's just afraid for herself, afraid for Charlie, afraid for Jacob still, even though she's at home, but she's also like, oh, but I'm at home. I'm not anywhere near La Push or whatever. But who actually ends up at the window? Our favorite good boy, Jacob, who was very mean to her before this.
He was just big Angie. He was
big Angie.
Don't come here anymore, Bella.
I'm friends with Sam now. And she's like, but you hate Sam. He's like, no, he's fine. It's like, what has he done to you? No. Really dramatics. But Jacob comes on in, almost falls off a tree or something. I kind of had a hard time visualizing it the way Stephanie Meyer worded it, because it sounded like someone was like already on like a ledge and at the window versus like someone hanging from a tree at the window. I don't know. Either way,
It's like it's not a structurally sound, like, you know how trees have bend to them. So this tree was small enough still where like the top of it was only barely taller than the window Bella is in. So whenever Jacob climbed up to it, like he started swaying on the top of it. And obviously,
Okay.
you know, he was leaning towards the window. So he like, whenever it would lean into the house, he would like scratch on the window and then he'd lean, the tree would rebound back. So he was just moving back and forth until, that's why I like to imagine that he was like, Bella,
What?
Bella, let me in.
No,
Let me in.
help.
Yeah, help. This is why as soon as she opened the window, he was just like, it's just jumped straight through that thing like a show dog.
Yeah, essentially he goes out of frustration because he doesn't want to not be friends with Bella, but he's just big Angie because he's a growing boy with hormones. Question mark, as we'll find out later. That not necessarily the case, but he essentially is like, Bella, you already know the answer. Just go back in that memory bank of the story I told you that one time. She didn't really remember it, but then she had a dream about it and then instantly remembered everything.
Yeah, I mean, granted, Bella had a long day.
Yeah, she did have a long day.
She's been sick, and then she got unsick, and then her best friend all of a sudden didn't want to talk to her. Then she was worried he was in a fucking cult/gang. And then she goes to confront him finally after being ghosted by literally everyone in La Push. And then he's like, no, we can't be friends anymore. It's, you know, blah, 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 blah. Angst. And Bella felt like her heart got ripped out and had just been miserable at home. And she's dead tired. Oh, and then she almost got like eaten once. That day. I think, or
Yeah,
maybe the
was
day
that
before.
earlier that day already? No,
Yeah,
that
I
was
think
like,
so.
what was it, 2
Or
days?
was
I don't know.
I don't remember the timeline, but like that had just also
It was
recently
really quick
happened.
succession. It was at least the day before.
Yeah. So like she had also been having a terrible nightmare before she got woken up or whatever. Yeah, because she was restlessly sleeping before she heard the stuff at the window. So it's like there's a point during this that she's like, this is just a dream. This is
Yeah.
just a nightmare. This is what's happening. Like, this isn't real right now because there's no way. And Jacob's like, you have to remember, you have to figure it out. Bella's like, eyes can't even open long enough to look at Jacob, just like, what? What do
Yeah.
you mean? What are you talking about? Like, I do not envy Bella in this moment at all. Of someone being just like, you have to remember. She's just like, I don't even remember what I did today. How do you expect me to remember what happened over a year ago? But
Yeah.
but yeah, they come in. Jacob says all that stuff, and I particularly liked that for one of the clues Jacob tried to give Bella is he starts panting.
Yeah.
Just like, Jacob, please.
Be a chill, bud.
It's just he just like because as we'll find out later why, but like he couldn't tell Bella outright, so he had to just be like, "Oh, but you can guess, you can figure this out. Let me just give you
That's
some
how we can
clues."
get
And Bella's
around
like,
it.
"Yeah," and Bella's like, "I'm so tired. What are you talking about?" I did like the line. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I did like the line though when because a lot of this moment, a lot of this chapter was a lot of just like um parallels between kind of Jacob and Edward, right off the bat from jumping through the window to like how we covered the secret, right? Because Edward was always very much just like not trying his best not to give any clues as to he is a vampire. Granted, he is older. This is something he's practiced, and he had, been taught not to give anybody any secrets. And Bella was not someone that was significant in his life until he met her. Whereas in Jacob knew Bella before this happened, obsessed with Bella. And he's like, all I want to do is tell you. That's all I want to do. It's been 2 weeks and all I want to do is tell you. And I can't tell you. And it's not so much because I don't want to tell you. It's because other people don't want me to tell you.
And it's like, you think about that when you read it and it's like, really, dude? And then you're like, oh, there's like a metaphysical compulsion here when you find out why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which we'll get into when we get there. But I'm just like, oh, I guess that's a good reason that your friends literally don't want you to.
Yeah. It's like, but even then, I mean, it's still a secret because he even says it's a secret that's not all mine to tell. Right.
Yeah. Which is
so
true.
Like at the same, yeah. Which Bella completely understands just at the secret part, right? It's like, because she's been doing it for over a year.
Yeah, and he knows that she's been keeping that secret, so he points it out. It's like, you know about keeping secrets, so like you can't like really judge me on this keeping secrets thing.
Yeah, and it's like I love the line where it was, for me, this was all essentially voluntary. I protected the Cullen secret out of love, unrequited but true. For Jacob, it didn't seem to be that way. And I was like, damn. First of all, good line, Stephanie Meyer. But also, it's so true.
Yeah.
Because Bella does this all out of just love and care for the people in her life. She has not told a soul about any of this mystical world, as she puts it. But it's very funny to me that both Edward and Bella, or Edward and Jacob, very much were just like, I want you to know, but in their own ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also love the line or the moment where Bella was just like, what if we just ran away? Just you and me. What if we left home and left Sam behind? And it's like, it's not something I can run away from, Bella. but if I could, I would run with you. And I'm like, that's such teenager shit. Also, Bella just constantly wanting to run away. She does
Yeah.
the exact same thing with Edward, with James and Victoria when they were after them. She was just like, what if we just ran away? Just you and me. What if we just left? I'm like, Bella, I've heard this song before.
Yup. Stop
Like,
running
stop
from
trying to
your
run away.
problems, girl.
Though, TBH, big Renee energy. I get it.
Oh, for sure.
I get where
Like mother, like daughter, I guess.
I see where it came from.
Oh my god. Though speaking of parents, you know who's automatically getting an L, my L of the week, just for one line pretty much in this entire like 3 chapters?
What?
It's Charlie. You want to know what line?
Yeah. What line
So
was it?
Charlie is explaining about how he has to like really get into work because another attack happened with the wolves and they're going out for a search party. And Bella already has the realization that they're werewolves from her dream. And she's like, are you going to hurt the wolves essentially? And she's like, what else can we do? What's wrong? He asked, his tense eyes studying my face. I felt faint. I must be whiter than usual. You aren't turning into a tree hugger on me, are you? Wow. First of all, wolves. Like, well, if you're gonna say, you could have at least made a pun on that joke. Like, being a dad, make a dad joke and say wolf hugger. Because that also would have been very funny, Stephanie Meyer, given the current context of where we are with our relationship with Jacob. So, missed opportunity all around.
Oh my god. There was a moment in here that I'm like, this is peak millennial humor, and I can't handle it. I think it's in the next chapter though. Another thing I just wanted to say is that I kind of got like big Jekyll and Hyde energy from the way that Stephanie Meyer would describe Jacob's personality now. Like, at least from Bella's perspective, it was always just like that, that smile was half Jacob, half Sam, or that snarl was all Sam, or stuff like that. I was just, but like never really got to full Jacob in a lot of the way she described Jacob. It was always just like, he was a little bit like Jacob before, but not fully. And I was like, oh, that's such an interesting thing I never thought of reading through it the first time.
And the kind of like, you wonder if it's like because of the influence of Sam, or if it's like part of that influence from being in the pack, as we'll find out. Or like, it's like a little bit mixed there. And then the thing is, we do gradually see when the stress of not having to keep the secret later in these chapters, he does like become a little bit more Jacob. Granted, he's a bigger Jacob because he's literally like, what he's a werewolf. Shocker.
What?
What? So yeah.
Before we get to chapter 13, I would like to add an anecdote about these movies. So I make the joke a lot. It's I've heard this song before, but I didn't like the ending, which is a Taylor Swift lyric. Taylor Swift wanted to be like in the background or like an extra in the Twilight movies. And for the most part, everyone had been like okay with it, except Stephanie Meyer, because she thought it would be too distracting to have Taylor Swift somewhere in the movie. And this was when Taylor Swift was dating Taylor Lautner, who plays Jacob Black. And what's fun about that is because a lot of things were happening because Taylor and Taylor, right? It was a lot of jokes happening then. But they've since broken up, whatever. Taylor Lautner, now engaged to his longtime girlfriend, whose name is also Taylor. And they have talked about how she will be taking his last name. So they will both be Taylor Lautner.
Oh my God, that's so good. She honestly had to like jump for that opportunity. Oh my God. If not her, he had to. Oh my God. I would do the same exact fucking thing. If my partner shared the same first name and we were getting married, I would 100% take the same last name. Them feminism out the window. Independent woman out the window. I'm taking that name for the meme.
We will be Taylor Lautner squared, whether we like it or not. Yeah.
I imagine they probably, for legal documentation, probably need to do a little initial in the middle. But like, oh my God, the way I would take advantage of that, our social medias would be a wreck.
You'd have to be like a family influencer at that point, right? Like you'd have no choice.
Oh my God. Can you imagine they named all their kids Taylor too?
Look, I understand that's such a shitty thing to do, but that would be so funny. That'd be so
but
funny.
All spelled differently.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an E there somewhere.
Yeah.
A Y. There's another E in a different spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yo, I'm so glad you shared that fact. I'm so glad. Oh my God.
I wrote it into my notes because I needed to share that.
I love that so much.
Got engaged I want to say a couple months ago, but it could have been anywhere from like a couple of months to like 2 years ago at this point.
What is time?
It is time. But I saw that and I was very excited. But I thought about that because I thought about Taylor Swift and how she wanted to be in I think it was this movie, New Moon. Because I think this is when they were dating. I'm not sure though.
And she's like, oh, I can get it in because I'm dating the actor.
Yeah, and she was Taylor Swift. So but no.
Was this like this was still like kind of more like country pop Taylor Swift though, right?
I think.
Or was she just starting her more pop phase?
Had just come out. I think Fearless had just come out, maybe. Because this movies were like late 2000s. So maybe, she's still not like adult Taylor Swift. But like she's getting there. Because Taylor Lautner's album, or the album that is about Taylor Lautner, or at least the songs in there.
Yeah.
Very nice. They had a very good relationship. In fact, Taylor apologized to him in that album. For just like you were great. Look, you were the best. You were awesome. It was me. It was 100% me. And, I'm sorry. You were great from what I understand.
Well, that's good. That's a healthy breakup.
Yeah, exactly. She was just like,
unless it was only apologizing in the album, maybe not the healthiest, but at least like Taylor's which one? I don't know. Have handled it healthily.
It's like, it was a good break. I think they might be friends. It was a good breakup between them. So, which is of note because she didn't have a lot of great breakups. But
trouble.
But yeah, just wanted to say that as we go into chapter 13.
Yeah, labeled killer. Bella has rushed out the door after her dad warned, being like, I need to go to La Push. I need to talk to Jacob, right now. He's like, what the hell? You, literally just, a night ago, you were all messed up from, a friendship breakup, essentially. And now you want to head down there. He's like, yeah, but I really need to talk to him face to face. He warns her about the wolves. And now she's like, oh, crap. I need to tell Jacob. And then I got to, they can't. She's getting, all the wires crossed because she only made the realization about the wolf attacks and then the werewolves being like, oh no, are they just killing innocent people for fun or whatever? And then but then I also don't want my dad to hurt Jacob. I don't want Jacob and to hurt my dad or whatever. So she's just got all the wires crisscrossed. But the one thing she wants to do is talk to Jacob and clear this up. We love wanting communication. Though I think what's really funny is it starts off he's there asleep, but when he finally wakes up and meets her on the beach, they're talking about two different things and they're agreeing on it. But then they're like, wait, we're not talking about the same thing.
It's before we even get there, I just want to have a moment to really appreciate that Bella, for once in her goddamn life, has stopped to think about the fact that there are mythical creatures in this world now. In her world.
Yeah, not just only vampires, just vampires, cool. Maybe they've always been around. Neat. Fucking werewolves? Man. Mythical, magical.
Yeah, because she spirals a little bit because she's like, what kind of place was this? Could a world really exist where ancient legends went wandering around borders on tiny, insignificant towns, facing down mythical monsters? Did this mean that every impossible fairy tale was grounded somewhere in absolute truth? Was there anything sane or normal at all, or was everything just magic and ghost stories? And then later on, she says a line that I really liked, which is, "Wasn't one myth enough for anyone? Enough for a lifetime?" And I was like, "Yeah, true, true."
Yeah.
What
I also
I
would
mean,
be pretty overwhelmed.
honestly, if I were to encounter a supernatural being who, like, undoubtedly was supernatural, one of my first questions would be, "So, are there like other mythical
Yeah.
creatures, or like, are you the only one?" Because
Yeah,
like,
like
there's no way. It's only one.
Bigfoot, Loch Ness, the Boogeyman, Swamp Thing. You want to like let me in on some of those?
Yeah, like which ones are the true ones? Which ones aren't true? Like, what do I have to be worried about? Like, are fairies a thing? Is that like an actual thing I have to worry about instead of just like a mythical thing?
Yeah,
Like,
do I actually have to worry about the thing because I don't live near a body of water? Like,
yeah, it's just like, well, what's up with this? I also liked the reminder of the line, "Werewolves have enemies?" Question mark. And the response is only one.
yeah,
Because like it leaves it's an open-ended answer, but really we know what the one is.
yeah,
Mostly because we only know about one other mythical creature, but you know who maybe there's more.
yeah.
And
This is also like a
I
little
think it's
funny line coming from Jacob too, because like in the macho rivalry, he also only has one enemy.
yeah, absolutely.
It's a nice little
It's
double
like,
there.
yeah. And so when she finally does get, oh, well, because then she has like that moral dilemma of just like, am I okay with Jacob killing people? I mean, vampires kill people, yeah, but the Cullens don't. It's like, well, maybe it's different for werewolves, but I mean, I've seen how hard the Cullens struggled. Like, it certainly can't be harder than that, right? And it's like, do I still love Jacob? Like, do I want him to be stopped? Like, this is all that's going on in her mind. She's
Yeah.
like, what do I do here in this situation?
Yeah, and it's just
And
like I side with the Cullens, but do I necessarily side with all vampires? Not necessarily, because like one of them tried to freaking murder me.
exactly. In fact, one is actively trying to murder
Yeah.
you.
Two, in fact,
Uh,
like one is okay. One by association, but the other's definitely trying to actively murder you.
Yeah. And it's just like one of the things that like for me was kind of hard to agree with was the line of that she kept kind of repeating as she went through this, is that once you cared about a person, it was impossible to be logical about them anymore. Um which I don't at all agree with just in general. I think that that's
Mhm.
a shitty take. Then it's absolutely rancid now of a take, but before even it was just like, no.
Yeah.
But like as a teenager, I guess that's the only way you can like logic your way through why you care so much about someone else and you're kind of okay with them with looking the other way in some cases.
Yeah.
At least for like the boundary that she had set of just like, I need to at least go talk to him and figure out why he's doing this. Like if
Yeah.
I can just figure out the why, maybe we can figure out a way to stop it. Because for her, it's still just Jacob. Jacob is a singular entity that is a werewolf.
Yeah.
Um,
Like she doesn't know that what we will go into later on, but that there may be
yeah.
more than one. Like there's more than one vampire. There must be more than one werewolf.
Yeah. But I mean, again, she just had a terrible night's sleep.
Yep.
She's had a terrible week of
Yep.
just full of nightmares and heartbreak. And she literally woke up super early. So she didn't even get a lot of sleep. But she
No.
woke up screaming this morning. And she was like, all right, I'm going to go. And then she becomes lightheaded just thinking about everything. And then she went to go talk to Jacob. So like she's not like all there 100%. Like
For sure.
she is still catching up to herself. But yeah, like you said, she goes in, Billy lets her in almost accidentally. And
Yeah.
she goes to see Jacob. and she sees that he's like super tired looking as he's just hanging off his small little bed.
Yep.
And she goes to where they first talked, where he first told her the story, which is also featured in her dream twice now, once with Edward and now once with Jacob. And it pops in, and he immediately is kind of like aggro on Bella.
Yeah.
Because she is like not looking positive about the situation. And, like you said, there's like almost a comical moment here where they're just like where Jacob's just like, oh, of course you're mad that I'm a monster.
Yeah.
And Bella's like, well, yeah, like I'm concerned, Jacob. You're killing people.
It's like, wait, what? No, I'm a werewolf. and she's like, yeah, that part doesn't bother me, dude.
It's like, yeah, whatever.
Like some of the best because I'm like, yeah, I would have that attitude too now that like my ex was a vampire. Like, yeah, I don't care you're a werewolf.
It's just like, it's not that you're a werewolf, Jake. It's that you're killing people. That's the problem. And for me, this entire moment, I was just like, this is peak millennial humor right here.
Yeah.
This is what's happening. This is millennial. This is like a llamas with hats skit. This is like Charlie the Unicorn said this. Like, this is
Amanda Show dancing lobsters.
Yeah, like this is peak 2000s humor. And like the way that they're just like, they hug it out. And it's just like, sorry, I called you a hypocrite. Sorry, I called you a murderer.
Called you a murderer. I was like, okay. Ha ha.
God, the other thing that I loved in this scene is when they're discussing it, where Bella's just like, I don't get it. What do you mean? And Jacob goes, Bella, honey, we only protect people for one thing or one enemy. It's the reason we exist, because they do. I'm just like, I can't believe Jacob just hit her with the Bella honey. Yeah. Like, honey.
Like, oh, you're so adorable right now. Is this also where, he also is like, oh yeah, by the way, Laurent's dead. This is also
Laurent's
here, right?
dead.
She's like, wait, you did it? It's like, well, it was a group effort. It was a group effort.
It's like, wow. This is something I do want to point out, because we're going to see the opposite of this later in the series, of the way that the wolves always call vampires not really vampires. They will always call them things like bloodsuckers or leeches or something along those lines, some sort of insult, essentially. And that is how they always refer to them. And as we will see, you saw in this next chapter, even the other boys have like zero respect or zero anything for vampires. They are simply prey to them, essentially. So it is something to keep in mind as we go forward, because there is a commentary to be made about how the vampires refer to the wolves also. But it is a two-way street. They are, in fact, two mortal enemies.
Yep.
Immortal enemies.
The mortal enemies.
Yeah. So
antithesis of each other.
Exactly. So there is a commentary to be made there, that they don't look at them as people. They look at them as monsters and look at themselves to be more than that. But yeah, we enter the next chapter where we meet them.
I think the one thing to know is that let me double check this. They do the meeting in that one, yeah. But Bella gives the realization being like, you killed Laurent, but like, and he's like, oh yeah, and this other one, we thought like by killing the mate, she would like back off. It's like, she's like, that's not the mate. That's like, and she explains like the whole situation of how Victoria's out to get her because mate for mate, and Laurent's just kind of helping. And he's like, oh, now we have information. We should go chat with the rest of them. And she's like, I don't know. But they go do that anyway.
Yeah, because now, God, Bella really has not had a break on this day. because like now she has to struggle with the realization that all these people are dying
because of her.
Because of her, essentially. Like not
Yeah.
directly. It is definitely Victoria
Yeah.
killing people. But Bella will take that to heart that it is her fault.
Yeah.
It is just
And
a
it is
cause and
not.
effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
will
so
mention really quick before we move on that this is also where we learn about the weird pack compulsion of like, if Sam says you can't say anything, then the rest of the pack can't say anything because Sam is the alpha. So this is why he literally could not say anything because he is compelled to not do so because he is under Sam's orders as a subordinate in the pack.
I forgot what they called it. Embry called it the word, but I can't remember what it is now.
Oh, it's like a
Injunction?
I. Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
We'll run into the word.
Yeah, but yeah, and so they go off, and she's like, "Are you sure they're going to be okay with this?" Oh, because he goes off to call a meeting. Jacob goes off into the woods to call a meeting, and that's where we find out that they have this sort of
mental link.
Yeah, mental link where they can hear each other's thoughts, kind of like Edward. Except it is with the whole pack instead of just
a person. Like Edward's power is to pinpoint on somebody in his vicinity versus like I just kept going in my head for those that play Dungeons and Dragons. Wolves in Dungeons and Dragons have an ability. Wolves and also like kobolds, I think, have an ability called pack tactics, and they get bonuses if they're fighting together. And I'm like, pack tactics. Every time I read all these powers, it has to do with like being together as the group. So that's for my tabletop RPG nerds out there.
You're like, it is injunction, by the way.
Word.
Yeah, and so he goes off, he tells them, he wolfs out for a second, and then he comes back. And Bella's like, "Did you just wolf out?" He's like, "Yeah."
Just wolf out.
And so they go to where they drove their motorcycles before, where they biked. And they meet up with the boys, the rest of the pack.
Yeah.
Jared, Paul, Embry, and Sam.
Yeah, Sam is generally chill because he's composed as a leader, but like, who is it? Paul? Was it Paul or Jake? Paul loses it, right?
Paul. Yeah, Paul is the guy who has anger management issues.
Yeah.
He is pissed. Because he's just like, "How dare you fucking do this for the yeah." It's like, "Oh yeah, you'll protect her, but you won't protect us." I can't believe you would just spill the secrets to like what was it, a leech lover or whatever he called her, whatever insult he did, to put it nicely. And he cannot control his anger, and he shifts. Because we also learn that is what like triggers a shift to become a wolf, is, at least in this case, is becoming losing control of your emotions or your anger in this case. So Paul loses it, and Jacob immediately starts like jumps at Paul and immediately turns into a wolf, and they get into a little bit of a tussle that goes off into the woods,
a macho tussle between two wolves,
which like freaks the fuck out of Bella. I mean, I think that's a fairly normal response, which honestly is very refreshing from Bella, who has normally just been extremely nonchalant about everything about vampires. And so even in death, she was like real nonchalant about the vampire aspect of stuff that was happening to her. And no one else was really like that, you know?
They're like, "Ooh, who you think's gonna win? Let's put some bets on people." Like, they were being real dudes. Like,
I can just imagine as Sam in the background just being like, "Oh my god."
Yep.
Kids.
Yeah. Especially because we learned that Sam had to do this by him. He had to learn about the powers by himself, which creates a lot of sympathy from Bella for Sam, learning that he had no one else to turn to learn how to do this werewolf thing. and how to like manage his emotions and manage his transformations. And that Jacob is like, yeah, he's helped guide everyone here through all of that. He's actually really great and really caring and all of that. And like, again, he's taking care of his pack.
Yeah.
Which is really good.
Which explains all the nice things, like the complete 180 Jacob did on Sam as soon as, you know, he became a werewolf.
Yeah, like even like the first night they like when he was starting to turn for the first time, like Sam was like immediately at the house and they were all like they were all coaching him through it essentially, but he's like, it was the worst pain ever.
Yeah, exactly. And so they go off. Jake and Paul go off in one direction through the forest fighting. Sam directs Jared and Embry to like take Bella off to Emily's house and also to take their clothes, because like Sam like takes off his shoes and then heads off into the forest and shifts and goes after the boys.
Jacob lost his last pair of good shoes.
Yup. Yeah. And then the shreds that Paul left behind. Jared's just like, God, not again, Paul, come on.
Yeah.
And then they're like betting. They're just like, oh, $10 that Paul like hurts Jacob. And Emery's like, nah, Jacob's got that. Did you see that? He's bigger, he's stronger, and he shifted in like 0.5 seconds. He's got this. $10 easier.
It's such like dude energy. Like this is like when someone when everyone is like, you're in a gym class together and are all trying a new sport for the first time. It has that energy, but you have people that are naturally good at sports and they're like going at it. And it's like, then everyone's like, oh man, that guy's so cool or whatever. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, I've seen this scene before, just not with werewolves.
And yeah, Embry decides or chooses with the encouragement of Jared to drive the truck because Bella is looking
real bad
right now. Oh, real rough. God, it's
the dog jokes are gonna keep happening.
And Jared is in the back because he has a weak stomach, which I think is real funny considering what they do in their leisure time.
Yeah.
So Jared's just like, yeah, I have a weak stomach, so I'm gonna go hang out in the back.
I don't want her to puke on me if she pukes.
And then it's like, nah, she's not gonna puke. She's with the bloodsuckers. $5 she doesn't hurl. And Jared's like, I'll take that.
On everything.
And then the fact that Embry like leans over to Bella and's like, hey, could you like try not hurl? Because I only have $10 on me for that other bet. Bella's like, yeah, sure. I'll try.
Bella's still out here trying to just do her goddamn best.
Bella's just trying her hard. Honestly, healthy reactions to everything that's happening.
Yeah.
Which, I'm proud of you, Bella. This is growth.
Yep. On the way to Emily's house, who is Sam's fiance at this point.
Yeah, as we find out. Yeah.
It was mentioned, like, I forget, one of the boys in the car mentioned, like, oh, by the way, when we get there, don't stare. Sam doesn't like that. And she's like, okay, whatever that means.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. And they get there, and it's still like 10 o'clock. It's like early in the morning. Not super early because time has passed for Jacob to like wake up. But like, it's like 10 o'clock-ish. So like, people are just getting started with their days, or they're like, because they arrived to Emily making breakfast for everybody.
She just made some muffins.
Yeah, some muffins, and she's doing a huge thing of eggs, like a buffet portion. I'm like, yeah, you're gonna feed 5 werewolves? Yeah, you're gonna freaking make 10 dozen eggs. These are growing boys. But Bella like is like, oh, I don't know why they didn't like Emily's beautiful. I don't understand why they said not to stare. And then she fully turns around and you see that like potentially her face has been mauled.
Yeah.
And Bella reflects on what Jacob has mentioned and how Sam was the only one like by himself to go through this. And it seems like from inference that Emily got hurt during some transformation in the early days of Sam being a werewolf, which is a very sad story. But Emily here is supporting not only Sam, but all of the werewolf boys in this way through their journey as werewolves and learning, because it's essentially their like heritage, right? As in as their tribe's heritage here. So
Yeah, I mean, like I was recapped here that one of the like old legends of the Quileute tribe is, or the Quileute people, is basically like Noah and the Ark sort of vibe of just like when the Great Flood happened, they were in their canoes, and then when it all went down, they joined up with wolves, and together they were able to once again prosper. And that's why it is illegal to kill wolves on Quileute land, because they are like brothers to them. So it is basically like an origin story of the Quileute. So it is understandable why.
yeah, and
Everyone knows the story and why they would be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and there's only like a few, like not everyone becomes a werewolf, but those that are the werewolves are the protectors of the tribe and the surrounding humanity from the cold ones.
Yeah,
so
though obviously not everyone knows
yeah,
about
like
werewolves.
not Embry, the other one.
Yeah, like Embry, Quill,
Yeah,
Jacob,
Quill doesn't know, right?
Paul, Jarrett,
Yeah.
like no one knew. It was all just stories, right? It's just like silly stories, because who's going to believe a mythical story? And understandably, I can see why you wouldn't just want to parade around town as a large werewolf.
Yeah,
So on the res, so I can imagine why.
because then you get reactions
It's,
like a hunting party.
yeah, why you would want to keep that on the DL, even from the people inside the res. So
yeah, because then you get panic or whatever.
But it is just understood that like, hey, this is our heritage. And so I assume, while surprising, not that surprising when you find out if you're Quileute.
And that's the thing, like we find out later as like they're talking about it, when they're coming up with, we'll circle back to like the plans that they have, but when they're talking about plans and like splitting up, they're like, oh man, if like when Quill's ready to join us, we can split evenly. But then they all had this look on their face. I was like, we actually really don't want that for him to happen. Like it would be able to be like, oh, it's beneficial for us, so we have more numbers, but we don't want him to go through this pain that we are suffering, because it is still suffering for them. Even though it's great, like great power, great responsibility, double-edged sword, all this deal with becoming a werewolf. Like you take on all of these burdens as a protector. It's a painful thing to go through sometimes, especially if you're just learning. So they want to make sure like it's painful the first time you transform. So they want to still protect like the people that haven't turned into werewolves yet and let them retain their humanity. Something that I think is like really interesting, that you see multiple people here praying essentially for their friends to keep their humanity, where like Edward was also really wanting Bella to keep her humanity. Like there is like this like thread of a theme of like maintaining humanity amongst being a monster or being amongst monsters.
Yeah, it's like, because the other thing is that it's not their choice.
Yeah.
It's not their choice who turns into a werewolf. Granted, it probably isn't your choice to become a vampire either. That gets chosen for you, I feel like.
Yeah.
And so because it's not their choice, it is a reaction to the fact that there are vampires in the vicinity. And it is, the natural protection from their ancestry to protect the tribe. And so and so I totally get it. I wonder if like they are the only people who do this, or if other people have like protections towards vampires. Anyways,
that's true. Like like there are other parts of the world that have vampires. Who's protecting those people? Because like the regional protectors of the Pacific Northwest right here are the Quileute. So like,
yeah,
we don't know like does Alaska have protections? Like, who's up there? Like, are there some Inuit that are also turning into werewolves? I don't know. I mean, granted, they have different origin stories and different like creation myths, so probably not. But I'm just like curious: is there like what's the equivalent in the world?
Yeah. And the other thing is, aside from not getting to choose, they then lose their autonomy. When they become a werewolf, because not only are you, if you're not the alpha of the pack, the leader of the pack, you don't have total say in what you can and can't do. And not only that, you have no privacy. You lose all privacy when you become a werewolf. Everyone will know your every thought, if you from anywhere, right? Like, as Jacob said. Yeah. It's like, no matter what, they will be able to hear your thoughts. So it's just like, while it is, you do get this instant bond with these people, it's not a bond formed out of choice. It's a formed out of necessity.
Yeah, or even just like it's like part necessity and part like I don't even know what like the word I'm looking for is. It feels like it's futility, but like it's a utility choice, it's a necessity by the nature of like the werewolf lore and powers here.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not for wanting. So
yeah, exactly. So it's like I totally understand why when Quill is brought up, when Embry brings up Quill, that everyone just like takes a moment of silence of just like, God, I hope it doesn't come to that.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll see what ends up happening if Quill gets to stay as a human or turn into a werewolf.
Yeah. This all comes up during some conversations when Jacob is finally like, hey, Bella's got some information for us that'll be really helpful. And like, essentially, like, it gets known that vampires have different power sets and that this vampire is not the mate of the one that they had killed like earlier in the week. And the motivations of Victoria was going to go after Bella, and they're like partially like, oh, we have bait, but like not really, but also kind of. But
also, they were very shocked that it was Bella.
Yeah.
Embry even just says like, but she's just the girl.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, isn't that a fact?
Yeah.
She in fact just is. However.
Like, yeah. Just to make her mate miserable, but like Victoria's not up to date with the latest relationship status on Facebook, it seems like.
yeah it's like, so now like Bella is also just like worried sick about even imagining Jacob being anywhere close to a vampire, as nonchalant as everyone else is about going up against vampires. Bella's just like, well, I know what they can do. Like Edward has described them to me and described how difficult they are to kill. She's still having trouble like thinking, imagining, fathoming that werewolves could possibly even put a dent into a vampire.
Yeah.
Even after being told Laurent is dead, it's just like, what do we do? It's like, I can't even think about Jacob getting hurt. He's like my little brother. Like, I'm so concerned. He's family.
Yeah. There's like a line here that I highlighted where she says, "You'll be careful, right?" I asked, an audible lump in my throat. The boys burst out into loud hoots of amusement. Everyone laughed at me, except Emily. She met my eyes, and I could suddenly see the symmetry underlying her deformity. Her face was still beautiful and alive with concern, even more fierce than mine. I had to look away before the love behind that concern could start me aching again. Like, Emily gets it. Like, these are boys being boys, but also these are boys throwing themselves in front of danger. Yes, they are doing like they are. It's essentially now their job to protect, but you're always going to be scared for those that, even though they are, I don't want to say willing for these boys in particular, but they're still doing it. Like, they're not resisting. So for all intents and purposes, like seeing them willingly go out to protect, Like it's a similar case for like those that enlist into the military. Sometimes out of necessity, right? Like it's usually like like financial necessity. Like that's scary, especially if they get deployed. Like this is a very similar kind of thing, a little more localized, obviously, and a little bit more fantastical, but a similar fear like Emily has for like those that like see their loved ones go off to be part of some form of military.
Yeah. It's and like, yeah, they're all I think any normal is very concerned about the situation. Because even she was concerned, Bella, being away from Edward, knowing when James was after them, and worried for Esme and all of them when they all separated. She was worried sick sitting there with Jasper and Alice in the hotel room, just being like, I don't know what I would do if any of them got hurt because of me. Even knowing everything she knows about vampires, she was still like, what if something bad happens to them? I don't know what I'd do if I was the cause of that. And now she's in a very similar situation with very similar people, being like, well, I guess this is once again, here we are, where other people are in danger because of me, which I think makes you a little bit more empathetic and sympathetic to the situation as to why Bella would like to also turn supernatural. So at least she could fight her own fights instead of needing other people to do it for her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because like she's never worried about herself. She is always worried about other people, whether it's Jacob, Charlie, Edward, the Colons, now the LaPush boys. Like it's always about the hunting party, like always somebody aside from herself, which he reiterates several times throughout just these 3 chapters, that it's like, I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about you. And he's like, oh, you don't have to worry about me. I'll be fine. But it's very interesting seeing how these two groups of people take a very similar threat, how they approach this similar threat, right? Because werewolves are a natural predator to vampires. So they are gonna, they have their instincts to get rid of the problem. And then with the vampires, it's like, while they have the same instinct, it's more out of like intense protection for their friend's mate, right? As the werewolves put it, the mate.
Yeah.
So it's just like interesting to see these parallels in these 2 back-to-back books. Even though this one's happening a little earlier, we're only about halfway. Little over halfway of the book.
Little over halfway, yeah.
I have my book over here. That's why I'm just like
looking at your bookmark. I was gonna look for our sections in the Discord. Which, if you join the Discord, you can ask us questions.
Yeah, because these chapters were fairly short. I mean, I say short; it was still like 80 pages.
No, but this one went by quick because this was a big. They honestly could have been 1 chapter in a more adult novel, to be quite honest. Like, because it was like that. Like these 3 chapters happened in the span of like 6 hours, 12 hours at most. Like,
yeah. I feel pretty comfortable
2
saying
hours
that.
a chapter.
Yeah, like I finished reading these in an hour because I was telling Knilly before, there was nothing in these chapters for me. The only thing I didn't remember about these chapters was Emily's name. That was the one thing I didn't remember off the top of my head. I knew that Sam had a fiance. I just did not know what her name was off the top of my head.
I knew this was going to be probably like the werewolf reveal part for Jacob. I didn't realize how many werewolves there were. I thought it was going to be like Sam and another, but there's 5 of them. There's like, they have a pack. And I guess I also like, I think the only thing that was like, oh, good, that's a surprise for me. Not really, was like, it was both like, it's probably Victoria, but like the confirmation that Victoria is our bad guy here, which is interesting because it's almost like a recurring villain, just like, like the continuation, because it's still the same baddie group. Very funny. But yeah, so that was like the bigger thing for me of like, how are they going to deal with this and what has she been doing and why her motivations essentially, which was the bigger reveal for me. And then like some of the power set stuff was like kind of fun for me to realize like the compulsion and injunctions essentially. And then, you know, hulking out or like having control, like there are things that can trigger and like, Jacob doesn't even fully master like the emotional part of that yet because he was so angry he couldn't tell Bella and he was starting to shake, but he's like trying to stay in control in the moments that he's talking with her with all of these frustrations. So that was like that's like interesting stuff to learn because like I did mention like in some of my like in like the earlier like predictions for this book, I'm like, it's definitely not moon stuff. Like we're not doing werewolf moon. It's not involuntarily under the moonlight. It seems to be involuntary due to your emotions, but you still have some control. So
yeah, it's like we learned a ton. Like this was, despite it being 70 pages, it was a lot we learned. Even just from the personalities of the guys, and we, you know, grew the people we knew in La Push now.
Yeah.
Now instead of just knowing Billy, Jake, Embry, and Quill, I know Paul, Jared, Sam, Emily, maybe even more people to come.
For sure.
It's like, it's pretty cool. Also, there's not another good spot to stop. After this, I ideally would have liked to add one more chapter to this, but it starts off the next section of the book, essentially. And
the next arc. Like this was all like arc 1, like
yeah.
Like we're at the rising action to the climax of the problem, the core problem of this book, which is Victoria. The other problem, the emotional problem is Bella wrangling her feelings about Jacob and vice versa. Like that's like the sub problem, which is throughout the book. But the main like moving problem is Victoria.
Yeah, and also it would feel a little bit like Whiplash. If I would have, if I were to add more chapters, I would have added the next few. But I felt like
that's too long.
That would have given us too much to talk about. Because then that starts off the next section of the book after that. Yep. So it's like I just felt like this was a good natural stopping point. And plus, like we got to talk about the boys. Happy times, yeah. The boys. I am realizing though that I don't know. I've said this many times that I don't know where a new moon starts and eclipse starts. It's becoming ever more and more clear as I read through it that I don't know what happens in Eclipse. I don't remember that book at all. I remember where Breaking Dawn starts. I don't remember what Eclipse really does. Yeah, I have no idea what Eclipse is about.
Maybe so that'll be your surprise. Oh, this is the end of the book?
I'm just like, well, I mean, I know what the end of the book is. Like,
I mean, yeah.
I had to read it. But yeah, I need to like start going through Eclipse and like sectioning off the chapters. So we can get some prep stuff done. And I'm just like, usually I know where the next chapters, where the next book's going. I have no idea. No clue. Could not tell you what's happening in Eclipse. I have not a clue. Like I know what the central like baddie is in the book, but I just don't know what else happened. I'm just like, what's the substance of this book? Like what's happening here?
We shall see. With that, should we get into our MVPs and L's of the week? Yeah, I know I already mentioned that like Charlie kind of got an L for me. Another L for me are Jacob's shoes. Truly an L, mostly for Jacob. I think my MVP of the week is going to go to Sam. Because I felt a lot more sympathy for him, especially because he's always been painted as this like, who's this dude being a guy in the background? Like that guy, you don't know what he's got going on. You're just literally judging this man. I mean, sure, he's like taking away your friends and all that for Jacob, but like Bella really only has hearsay judgment. But like to be the person that like essentially is the like cornerstone of this pack now, because like It seems like this is a new generation of werewolves. There hasn't had a need for some time, but as you mentioned, it's like kind of in response to there being a vampiric presence. So, which is the only reason that they didn't need it while the Cullens were around, is because of a literal treaty. So it was never like a danger until they left and other vampires were in town. So yeah, I think Sam gets a W from me. The other W I'm going to give is Emily's cooking. So
of course,
yeah.
I think my W for the week is probably going to be the bets between the boys.
That's a good one.
Those $15 Embry won. A W of the week.
Get a lot of it, $15.
I know, back in the 2000s, she could buy a house with $15. Just hold on to that. Economic crisis is coming.
Yeah,
able to buy a house with that money. And in my L of the week, I think is going to be. I think it's going to be. Oh, I had one and I completely forgot about it, and now I have to come up with one on the spot.
No.
My L of the week is going to be. I think still Billy. I think Billy's even though he's really not featured in these, and I think it's gonna be Billy for keeping all of this a secret but still at the same time pressuring Jacob to be the leader that he was.
Yeah.
And because everybody kept telling Jacob like, oh, you're gonna be, something's coming. You're gonna have to take responsibility eventually, just like your dad. And Jacob's like, stop it. I am 16 years old. Let me live. And now here we are.
Speaking of Billy, sorry to backtrack. I just got reminded of a great scene that we forgot to touch on, which is like right before Bella goes to the beach. She goes to Billy and she's just kind of like, Billy, I know, and without saying she knows. And Billy's like, it's one of those, it's once again, like with the vampire thing, they've communicated something without communicating. So like the thing is, they never act like they're in the loop. Like they'll never talk about it as if they were in the loop together. They just know that each other's knows, and then something's happening. And I'm like, you know what? For that, I feel like at a certain point, since like now that Bella has all sides of the picture, Billy can talk to her about shit now.
Well, the thing is that Billy doesn't like the Cullens. Like he does not like vampires, and therefore by association does not like the Cullens. And Bella, by association, loves the Cullens.
That's true.
They are her like family. So like Billy can talk, but all it's gonna be is him throwing out mythical slurs about her family.
Yeah, vampiric shade. They like that though. It's not the sun.
And so like they could talk about it, and they might. I generally don't remember, but
we shall see.
Yeah, but we'll see.
All right, so that just about wraps it up for this week's episode. You can join us on the Knilly online Discord to discuss episodes or ask questions after the show. You can also find the link in the description if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening on Anchor FM or Stitcher or wherever you're getting your podcast, Spotify, all those good places. The recording and past episodes can be found on the YouTube channel and all of those other podcast places I mentioned. Just search for Knilly and PB Podcast. New episodes go up the Friday after recording. And if you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. Any last comments, queries, commentary, PB?
Let's remember the good times.
Remember when we didn't know there were monsters all up in Forks? Yeah, those times. But yeah, thank you all for hanging out and listening. See you on the internet. Bye.